Cornwall is.
Yes, yeah. It's at the end of Ontario.
Okay, I think we will get started. We have 15 people on the call, and just to respect everyone's time. So we have people from all over, from Germany, from India, and this has been amazing. It's lifting my spirits. The morning session was pretty interesting, and we had lots of conversation going on. So again, thank you everyone for joining in now with Yvonne's session, which I am also very excited about. Okay, so let me see. I have just one second. Okay, so I just want to, I'll introduce Yvonne's a little bit, and then Yvonne will take over. So Angie says, I'm double booked, have a meeting at 12:30, so we'll have to leave early. No problem.
Sorry.
Everything is being recorded, and you will have access to it like 24 hours. I will try to post it on the event page as soon as I can. But yeah, okay. So Yvonne is a certified Zentangle teacher, and she holds a BA in visual art, and she has taught Zentangle to over 2,000 people, 2,000 class over 8 years. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, thanks.
That's a big number, yeah. And her initial approach to Zentangle was the creative practice it allowed for then in 2017, after she experienced a brain injury and came to understand the benefits of self-care. And we talked about self-care so much this morning. So it is one of the benefits is obviously pen to paper, and it's very calming when you do Zentangle. So Yvonne also believes in the process of creating, that it is a form of self-care, and create without any rules. There should be no rules. Yeah. Okay. So then, Yvonne, tell us a little bit more about yourself. What got you started in Zentangle, and what does it really mean for you?
So I fell into Zentangle when I was actually looking for things to do with my children. I have always been creative my whole life. I grew up with, seamstresses and bakers and a very creative family. And the creativity was not just, oh, I'm going to sit down and make this time to paint or draw or to crochet. It kind of also was, I'm going to crochet because we need a blanket. I'm going to, bake a beautiful cake because we need to, celebrate something. So as I got into adulthood and I had my children, I wanted to incorporate different ways of being creative with them. Because having an art degree, I knew all that stuff, but I'm like, okay, we gotta do it for little ones now. And Zentangle came across an internet search. And I didn't quite understand it at the time because truthfully, it just looked like a lot of line drawing. And I thought, well, that seems pretty basic. I skipped over that and went on to, toilet paper crafts and construction paper, whatever you do. And it wasn't until a year later, I met a woman and she was doing some creative outreach work with a deaf community. And through some interactions with her, I started going back through some of my things and explored Zentangle again, and realized that there was more than meets the eye, or more than, visually sort of, there we go, meets pen to paper, that there's sort of a whole method and a process to it. And about a year later, after I'd taken some classes from another certified Zentangle teacher, and explored it on my own through some publications, books, and things that were written on the topic, I went to Rhode Island and took the certification course from the founders. And it was originally just meant to be a little art vacation for myself and, self-care in that way. My kids were old enough, I could leave them for a week and not worry too much about them. And so interestingly enough, it's, when you mentioned that I've taught over 2,000 people, I never intended to teach it. It was completely something for me that I wanted to do. But through other things that I had been doing, Zentangle came into play. And the more I shared it with people and taught it to people, the more I started to realize that it's such a beautiful process and it has an art component to it, but it is so simple because it is literally pen and paper, and you can do it anywhere, anytime. And so it takes a lot of the stress out of that whole creative, I'm not an artist sort of, self-talk that we do and that we give ourselves all the time. So, kind of in a nutshell, that's how Zentangle came to be for me.
Yeah, and just for everyone to know that on the event page where you have the listing for Yvonne's workshop, the materials that are required are listed over there. So if you want to continue this, and of course connect with Yvonne with any other things that she's doing with Zentangle, by all means, all contact information is on the website. If you want to connect with her, her website, her email address, everything is there. Okay, Yvonne, you're on.
Super. And if you're fretting about supplies, don't fret. Literally grab whatever piece of paper and whatever pen you have close by. This works beautifully with just about anything. Okay, so did you make me a host, Alka, so I can do my screen share, please? Alka has muted herself. And I think I am. Oh, there we go. We always wait for the technology to do its thing. Stand by. Oh my goodness. It's a slow day today. There we go. When we switch hosting capabilities, things happen a little bit differently. I apologize for the delay there. There we go. There we go. Okay. I think you can pretty much all see what's happening on the screen now. So we have a very short amount of time here. So I'm going to do my best to really kind of get you into what the process of Zentangle is. And in a nutshell, there are many, many different factors and elements of Zentangle. It's an art form, it's a life skill, it's a tool, it's a perspective, and it is certainly an approach to mindfulness and self-care and just taking, 15 or 20 minutes out of your day to just, quietly sit with yourself, pen, a piece of paper, and not worry about anything else except what you're going to draw. And it sort of lets whatever else is going on in your world for those, few moments that you sit and tangle, as we refer to it, it lets all of that just sort of go by the wayside, sort of fall back in your brain and sort itself out somewhere where you're not worrying or fretting about it too much. So I do want to get us started right away to make the most of our time together. And so you really get a feel for what Zentangle is. Many of us, certainly in the last year, have become very good with technology in terms of connecting with people and learning things and even, getting our work done. But it's really nice to go back to, very tactile things, and certainly pen and paper fall into that category. So when I tell you that, I'm going to switch my focus here. When I tell you that you can draw this in 20 minutes or less, I know there's a few of you going, oh, no, I'm not good at stick people. I can't draw. The 20 minutes or less part, of course, happens, once you've done this a few times. When you learn it for the first time, of course, you're spending time watching me and then trying to translate onto the paper. But I guarantee you that if you do this a few times, you will very quickly come to understand that you can get into the flow of this very, very easily. For anybody that does yoga or that meditates on a regular basis, this is very much the same idea. Zentangle's been referred to as active meditation because instead of just sitting still and closing your eyes and sort of trying to tune everything out, you are instead giving yourself an activity that requires very few tools and it requires very few instructions. So truthfully, once you learn the basics, which you most likely will from me today, you will be able to sort of go and explore the Zentangle sites, and I'll reference those at the end, and really be able to pick up and feel like, you got a good basic sort of sturdy platform to start off with, and you will be able to continue. So much like meditation or yoga, where you learn a couple of basic breathing exercises or you learn the first few yoga stretches. And if you start to do those every day, you of course get better and better, and not necessarily faster at them, but you can certainly spend several hours at your desk, drawing square after square after square of paper. Or if you've got a busy day and at some point you just think, I just need that cup of coffee or cup of tea in 20 minutes just to relax, you can certainly insert a little square of paper into your day like that and get something like this done. So very quickly, I will talk about supplies. Zentangle is almost always drawn, well, traditionally, it turns into a beautiful art form in many other ways. But traditionally, it's done on a 3.5 by 3.5 inch piece of paper. So imagine that it's about coaster size. And the idea of that is that it's small, it's doable, it's not overwhelming, it's not a big blank page, it's not a sketchbook that you've got pages and pages that you think, I got to get through and fill them. It is just this one little square, and that's all you need to worry about for that moment. It's a good pen. So just quickly, there is official Zentangle paper that is traditionally used. It's beautiful handmade paper from Italy. But you can certainly cut up any heavier type paper, cardstock, watercolor paper. There's all kinds of things. And I do have those listed in a PDF for you that Alka will attach to the session later. There is also a type of pen that we use. I grabbed my very well used one, so we've lost all the branding on there. Traditionally, it is a Sakura Micron, and you can pick those up for a few dollars pretty much at Staples or any art stores. But the idea is that you want a well-inking pen. So those pens that have a fine marker tip on them are great. This is a uniball, so any of these gel pens that sort of really let that ink flow out are really nice. You can certainly do this with, a Crayola marker, a Sharpie, a ballpoint pen. But I think sometimes part of self-care and about making yourself feel better is also about using better tools. So, we all have those china cabinets with crystal and fancy dishes, and we pull them out on very special occasions. But every so often, it's nice to maybe pull out that crystal wine glass and use that with your dinner, or, pull out a piece of your grandmother's china and just, have a little cup of tea with a cookie on that china. And so the idea with Zentangle as well is in the hustle and bustle of every day, it's nice to use something that is a little more special, a little maybe better quality than you would normally be doing. So certainly you can do this on printer paper with a standard ballpoint pen, but just know that if you sort of, upgrade the tools a little bit, the experience also becomes a little bit better for you. It just feels better to draw on nicer paper. So The other tool you need is a pencil. This is just a Zentangle one, but it's just a regular 2HB. And we use that twice. We use that at the very beginning, and then we use it at the end. One of the interesting tools that comes along with Zentangle is something called a paper stump or a tortillon. And again, this is available at every art store. And we will use it at the end of our tiles, and it just smudges the graphite a little bit. But in case you don't have that handy, a Q-tip is a very good alternative. These tortillons are not very expensive, so you can certainly pick up a few. And I quite often like to carry my supplies in one of these little plastic photo boxes. It's like a 4x6 size. And so when you get your paper, you can cut up a few length squares, and they certainly tuck in there quite nicely with your supplies. And then you're kind of always ready to go with Zentangle. And I'm sure at this point you're thinking, well, how do I know what to do? This is where the drawing part comes in. There are hundreds and thousands of patterns out there. There's official Zentangle patterns. There are patterns created by certified Zentangle teachers. And there are patterns out there just created by people who've been, you know, drawing and doodling and tangling for a very long time, and they've come up with a unique combination of lines and shapes to put together. There's a whole, I could tell you the whole Zentangle story, but you can read that on the Zentangle.com website. So I'm not going to take up our time today with that, but basically, if you can write these letters or make these marks or draw these shapes, write your name and today's date, I promise you, you can absolutely draw something like this.
Yvonne, I had a quick question about that smudging tool. What's it called again? How do you spell it?
It is called, it's either called a paper stump.
Paper?
Or,
oh, okay.
Quite often it's referred to as a tortillon. And if you're ordering them online or even through, you know, any of the art stores online, quite often they come in a package of 3 or 4. So this is a double-ended one. They come in different thicknesses. Some come as thick as a cigar. And then there's ones that are basically a half size.
Tortillon. Okay, I'm just putting in the chat box for everybody.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah, just so that people know, because it was, hold on, I sent it.
Oh, we got lots of time. So usually with Zentangle, and this is sort of the feel-good part, you know, that starts this whole process, is you just take a moment. You've sat down, you have it, you know, in your head that you're going to give yourself a little bit of time to tangle. And it's all about gratitude and appreciation and just spending time in the moment that you're in and not worrying about everything else that's going on. And we just, you know, you settle into your seat, you get comfortable. You might want to take a deep breath. You might want to close your eyes, just let your shoulders drop. You might want to just stretch out your hands a little bit. Certainly if you've just come off the computer, if you've worked all morning or whatever, you might want to just give your hands a little stretch, a little wiggle. And again, just that deep breath. And we are going to start. We're going to start with our pencil. And Zentangle starts with, you know, you've got this little piece of paper and it is the blank page, and it can be quite daunting. And we do 4 little dots to sort of introduce ourselves to this blank piece of paper, to say hello to it. And then we've made our mark on that paper and we have somewhere to start. So those 4 little dots, one is going to be placed in each corner. And I know with my pencil probably on your screen, it's not very, very visible. But we start with pencil. I'm sure you can see that. And it does not matter how close or far they are out to that corner. The next thing we do is we're going to connect these dots. And It does not have to be a straight line. If you've got a little wiggle, if you've got a little bump in the table, if you're unsure of how a pencil works in your hand because it's been so long, you put pencil to paper, that's okay too. We have now just sort of started our little structure here. We've given us our space for where we are going to draw. And this is still a blank square, essentially. We've just made it smaller by putting in our pencil border. And the next thing we do, the next step in entangling, is to put a string in this space. And what that is, a string, if you would imagine dropping a string on this paper, it would land in some way that would give you other shapes. And in a way, it's almost like the old paint by numbers. What you end up having is spaces that you're going to fill in with tangles. So paint by numbers, you have spaces that you fill in with certain colors, and entangling, we use patterns to fill those spaces. So for today, for our little demo here, I'm going to suggest that our string, we're going to use the letter F, I think, for feel good. And I'm going to have you look at your tile, and from the left side of it, maybe just about a finger width, maybe a smidge more, just to make a straightish line just up and down there. So you've got kind of a column. And then you can do the same thing. Imagine that you're making a letter F. So let's say this top part is already our F here, and we're going to go down. Again, maybe about a quarter of the way or a finger width, and you're going to make that pencil mark. So we've got three sections, a smaller square and then two rectangular spaces. So we are all set to go. We've set up our tile, and you may have noticed I sort of turn it a little bit, and that's the beauty of also working on this 3.5 inch square, is that you can turn this, and the idea is that you turn it to make it work for you. You will quickly come to realize which way you are comfortable drawing, and making the tile, making the space small, just makes it more user-friendly. I'm starting to realize that the sun has changed in the room, and there's some really awful shadows here. So I'm just going to switch light for a second. And that should be slightly better.
Mm-hmm. Yvonne, before you start, where can people order these tiles, these papers?
They are really only available from Zentangle headquarters. You can contact me. I do sell them. I have little kits that I sell, or I do sell the tiles individually. Unfortunately, it is not something that is stocked in Michael's or Joann's or most art stores. There is a kit that is available through Sakura that occasionally ends up in retail or on Amazon. And I can, you know what, I can send you that information later that
yes,
it'll be in the PDF.
Okay, perfect. That would be helpful. Yes.
Yeah, but if anybody's interested, you know, the back of the actual tiles is all branded, and I'll talk about the back as we get towards the end of our tile. But it is wonderful. The paper is Fabriano Tiepolo from a wonderful 800-year-old factory in Europe, and they still make it by hand. So it's also not cheap. The squares are about $1 a piece, I think they work out to be. But
and when again, yeah, I'm also thinking of the usability. Like, it's kind of nice to make it. It looks so pretty. And I was also looking at your Instagram feed also with the different colors. They look beautiful.
Oh, absolutely. And I've got a couple of examples I'll show at the end.
So what do people do? Can you make some wall decor with it? I mean, what can you do with it?
There are all kinds of things. We have all kinds of, you know, a lot of my teaching colleagues, and I've done it myself. We've had stationery printed. We've had it printed on scarves, on T-shirts, on pillows. You can have it printed on notebooks, on phone cases. It's really just a matter of taking the piece, scanning it into your computer, and then using any number of websites or apps to have it printed on different things. So
okay.
there are lots and lots of possibilities. A lot of people, once they have a nice stack of these, they get them, if you happen to be into bookbinding, you can certainly sew them into a book. Yeah, there's lots of, and even something as basic as if you were to have just a blank card and, you attach it to the front of the card and then you can write your happy birthday or congratulations. And then you've got a nice little homemade card that, with a little piece of your artwork on it.
Nice.
That,
thank you.
That you can gift to somebody. So we're going to start with one of the very first patterns that's traditionally taught in Zentangle, and it's called Crescent Moon. And we're going to use a part of our string as the structure where we start this. And the one thing I want to tell you about these pencil marks that we've made, as much as we've built this as a structure to tangle, it is also optional. So there are many things, many rules in life, that we have to follow. And then there's some rules that we can kind of bend and we can make them work, to our favor and stuff. And even with feeling good, sometimes there's things that we know we want to do. We expect them to go a certain way and they might not. And Zentangle teaches us a wonderful lesson about finding opportunities and using those opportunities to our advantage or to see something in a different perspective and to learn from that. So we're going to start with Crescent Moon along this first line that we made. And I'm going to get you to draw it fairly big. You can see here in the example tile, I managed to fit 4 of those across. And you're going to take your pen and just slowly start to make those curved lines to get to a point like I just did at the end. It doesn't always have to finish. And in this case, we're going to use that pencil line and we're going to trace over it. That does not always happen in Zentangle. But once you've got these little humps, these little ladybug shapes, I want you to color them in. And while you're coloring these in, I want you to take the time to think about the time you're giving yourself right now. And the slowing down and learning this process of tangling and filling this shape and each shape that you drew afterwards with this nice dark black ink. One of the beauties of Zentangle, and this is, while we're coloring this in, this is where I sort of get to tell you a little more about the process of Zentangle. When Alka asked me to join the Feel Good Summit, I was really excited because one of the things, about feeling good, about practicing self-care and incorporating it into our daily or weekly or even monthly routines, whatever time we can allot ourselves. There's so many ways to do that. It's through exercise, it's through, maybe making your favorite foods, it's through any other number of activities. I think of my mother and grandmothers who enjoyed sewing and knitting, and they would do it, at the end of the day, and it was sort of their way to unwind. And, it was also practical because you got a blanket or a sweater out of it. But there are so many activities that we do like that. And certainly in modern times, there's a lot of talk about, a positive mindset and journaling and capturing your thoughts and stuff. And, for many of us, when we were younger, we kept diaries. And The one thing I've come to realize about Zentangle now that I've been doing it for almost 9 years consistently is that over time, yes, you improve and your tiles, as we call them, will change because you develop a certain style. I'm going to skip ahead here for a second in my conversation, and we're going to go to the next couple of steps here. So if you've colored them all in, what you want to do is here in step 4 is we're going to trace along the outside. So you're just going to give this another little bump, and in Zentangle speak, we call that an aura. So you're going to go around each of those little crescent moon shapes and do that. And we'll do it twice, I think. So the beauty of Zentangle and these little tiles is if you were to incorporate this into a practice, however often you can, you will end up with a stack of these remarkable little squares of intricate drawings. And I did show you one earlier on the back. We usually make a few notes on the back, but it's a nice way to go through and sort of journal in a way. And it's very nonverbal, of course. I think you've gotten that far. So I'm going to move us on to the next tangle that we're going to do. And it's fairly simple. It's a series of circles, and you do not need to worry about drawing perfect circles. If they're orbs, if they're spheres, if they're ellipses, they will do the job perfectly. So we're going to use this smaller rectangular space, and you're going to draw a set of, I don't know, larger. I was going to say dime size, but I actually think that's too big. And you can sort of nestle them in. Think of maybe a string of beads or a pearl necklace that you have. So once you've got a collection of these tiles, the really interesting thing is that you can sort of go through them over time. And it's amazing what they will have you recall. You'll remember the morning you tangled it, or you'll remember the park bench where you were sitting and you did a tangle while you were waiting to meet a friend, or your kids were playing in the park or whatever it was. And it's one of those things where I think everybody's caught up. So I'm just going to go into step number 3 here, and we're going to tuck in some smaller circles just where all of the big circles be. And then you can start to fill in just smaller ones. And we don't need to fill in the whole area. You'll see in the example there, there's just, a little nestling of the smaller ones in around, and then a couple that float away. So we'll do that. And the beauty of a stack of Zentangle tiles is if anybody was to ever find them, they would be quite impressed with the stack of drawings, these intricate little pieces of art that were created not necessarily to be art, but they were created in moments of time where, you're focusing on yourself, you're taking a breather from the busyness of being busy, of any little stresses or worries. And so it becomes a way to have a collection of thoughts and ideas, but they're represented more in images. So unlike a diary, if somebody's to find your diary or your journal and read what you wrote that day, that you were worried about the dog and you had a concerning appointment with a veterinarian, or you had some crosswords with a spouse or a family member, or if the kid left the kitchen a mess when you asked them to clean it up, you'd be a little mortified if somebody was flipping through those pages and reading your feelings about your day and stuff. And so to have a collection of these is really, really quite lovely, because you can flip through them and they only mean something to you because there will be a bit of recall that happens when you look at them. But if somebody else was to find them, you know, and put them all up on the wall, like Alka said, as a wall display, all they would see would be these beautiful little drawings. So it's definitely a very multi-purpose practice. And when I say we don't intentionally create art from these, it truly is a matter of getting our tile, starting with the 4 dots in the square, breaking up the space, and I'm going to talk about picking our tangles next as we move on to our next pattern that's called floors. And what happens when you sit down to tangle, and I will warn you now, when you go onto you know, the internet or Google or any website. So what I want to do with floors is we're going to take this square space and we're going to make those diagonal lines across, and then we'll turn. You can turn your tiles, certainly it makes it easier, and we'll make them across the other way. And so when you pick your tangles, as I was saying, you're going to go and do Google searches, or I'll give you a resource at the end that is a great place to find tangles.
So what I'm understanding is these tangles, like this one has floors and there's those circles. I don't know what the name is.
Yeah.
So are these, let's say, a set of some shapes, lines, circles?
Yes, they are. So when I showed this at the beginning, all tangles are basically based on these. These are your elemental strokes: a straight line, a curved line, a circle, and again a different curve. But you'll start to notice in the tangles themselves, all of the ways that they are all built. They're usually done in 6 steps or less.
Oh, okay.
So when I say that eventually you will be able to draw one of these tiles in 20 minutes or less, it's because you won't always have to rely on these instructions. Because they're done in 6 steps or less, it's a muscle memory thing. And so the more that you draw these, the more familiar and ingrained they will be to you, and you will be able to just sit down and take your pen and paper without having to go on the internet, without having to flip through a book to find any of these, and you will automatically start to draw.
Okay.
So our next step here in floors is, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so you can see a little bit better what I'm going to do. So where all of these cross points are, we're just going to draw a little square or a little diamond shape, depending on how you have it turned. And then you're going to fill that in. And we'll just continue like that until you have all of the little cross points marked off with a little black diamond. And so all of these patterns, and I will give you a resource, it'll be on the PDF, but I'll show it here at the end. There are all kinds. There's ones that are grid-based, like floors that we're doing. There are ones that are slightly more organic in shape, like we did the circles and the crescent moon. There's a huge variety in the types of patterns or tangles that you will find. And there's a lot of them out there. But what I want you to know is that you do not need to get overwhelmed with having to learn them all or knowing which ones fit with each one. That doesn't even exist in Zentangle. What happens is you will naturally be attracted to certain patterns. I've had students over the years that are accountants and math teachers, and they naturally gravitate to very logical, grid-based patterns. And then I have people who, they're wonderful gardeners, and so they really like having an organic tangle because then they start to see leaves and flowers and that kind of thing. So my suggestion would be to go through one of the pattern sites and just scroll through and pick 2 or 3 that sort of appeal to you visually, and then learn how to draw those. And I'm going to show you after we're done this tile here, because I think we're good for time. You only really need to know a handful of tangles, 3 or 4 or 5 of them, and just practice with those. Tangle with those for a certain amount of time, a few weeks or 10 tiles, and really get to just understand the flow of Zentangle and the gift of giving yourself the time, you know, in a week, in a day, whatever, to just sit and draw and just let the focus be on what your hand is doing with the paper, what your eyes are seeing your hand do, and just sort of the calmness and, your breathing slows down, your shoulders drop, and just the calmness that is the process of this. And then once you get, kind of hooked on Zentangle, there's a whole other world of art that you can do with this. So I also warn you that Zentangle can be a bit of a gateway drug to owning lots of different pens, lots of different colored markers, lots of different types of paper.
I can relate with both my hands up with that.
Exactly. And then putting it all to good use. So I do have some really great, I have some fun examples to show you after. So I'm going to introduce you to Avro. It is a tangle that I did create. These other 3 that you've drawn are official as Zentangle headquarter original tangles. Avro is one that I developed late last year. It's got a whole other history to it, but it's been published in 2 books, and I've done a couple of classes on it specifically. And I thought this would be a wonderful time to introduce it to, the Feel Good Summit as well. So Avro also fits into, it's got the straight line and the curved line. So it has 2 of the elemental strokes in it, and they're put together in a way that form an interesting pattern. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to this top section, and I'll show you here again in the sample tile. You're going to be able to fit about 4 of them across. And now that we have the crescent moon, it kind of acts as a little visual marker to where they're going to be. And this first step is much like they're going to draw or write a letter A. You're going to take it up about 3/4 of the way of that space. And then we're going to come over that pencil line and draw around and come down in a soft curved line. And then you're going to cross that A as if it was a regular letter. And I did that very quickly, but I wanted you to sort of see the flow of it. So when we do it again, you're nestling it into the one beside it. You're going to do that soft curved line, and you're just repeating it. You're going to make a little notch there and then repeat that curved line once and twice more. And as you're drawing, what's going to happen is you are going to have your hand shake. You're going to nudge the table with your knee. A pet is going to come into the room and distract you momentarily. And at some point, you're going to have a squiggle in your pen stroke, or you're going to draw and your hand is not going to move the way you expect it across the paper. And you're going to look at that stroke and think, well, that's not what I wanted to do. That doesn't look good. Or, oh, now I've made a mistake. It is not a mistake. It is truly a reflection of that space and that moment in time where that happened. And I guarantee you that once this is all done, any of those little things that you thought went wrong along the way. So I'm going to go in here and just double up this cross A line and color that in dark. I'll put the example just there. So any of those little mistakes or things that you think went wrong are just those small little pieces of your tile that will give it a whole lot of character. And when it's all done and drawn and shaded and, tucked away in a book as a bookmark or tucked on the mantle beside a candle or something, you won't even notice those little things. We like to say that those truly all just add character, because if you wanted something very perfect, that is what your computer and your printer are for. And you could, Google something or use a digital design program and draw something that was absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect, that was made by a machine. And this is just your drawing. This is you here in this time and space. I certainly have tiles over the years that I have drawn, and I was not in a good mood. And it was one of those times, several of those times where I'm either, I've had a busy day with the kids, or something didn't go as I planned. And I thought, no, you know what? I'm going to take some time. I'm going to sit and draw or paint or whatever. Inevitably, it feels forced, and I don't like what I did, but it is part of the process. And even though I may have not liked what I did at the time, it was self-care. I was taking myself away from a stressful day and trying to calm myself down so I could have a nice evening with my husband and kids. Or, it's much like if you just decide to go walk outside for a few minutes to cool off. Certainly, I have tiles that I do not like. And when I look at the note on the back, I know why I do not like them. But that's okay, because I also learned something from that as well. So this is pretty much our tile done. You have drawn your first Zentangle. And remember, it is your very first one. For a while there, I was always having my first one at my live classes and showing people what my first one looked like and what my, current one looks like. So again, keep this one, tuck it somewhere where you'll get to see it often. Certainly if you continue the Zentangle practice, because you'll get to see how you progress and how your sort of tangle style develops. So we have a few minutes here to introduce the shading. And this is where you're going to pull out your pencil and your Q-tips, which I'm guessing is most likely the tool of choice today. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. And we're going to start back with floors. Now, shading in art terms requires you to look at your piece, figure out where a light source would be, figure out the shape and the space that the light would be hitting and how those shadows would be created. It can all be very daunting. So in Zentangle, we don't worry about all of that. We literally do not think about where the light or the sun might be shining on this. What we do with our pencil is simply introduce a gray tone. And with introducing that gray tone in any of the spaces, you automatically start to make it look 3D. And then your intricate little drawing that now you know is fairly easy to draw, all of a sudden takes on a new life, and there's a little bit more oomph to it. So you don't really need to know the rules of light sources. What we're going to do with floors is we're just going to put a little bit of pencil just along the one side of one set of those lines that went diagonally. And very lightly, you're not trying to pencil this in. I always suggest to hold the pencil sort of on its side. And as if, when you were a child, you take a pencil crayon and try to scribble across the whole page to fill it in with color. You're just gliding that pencil just across there to just scrape a little bit of that graphite onto the paper. And then you can take your Q-tips and just very lightly, you will start to see that when you rub it over the graphite, it will start to sort of smudge and blend. And I'm going to switch to a tortillon just so you can see the tortillon does essentially the same thing. The tortillon will work better on several different types of paper. I find sometimes with the Q-tips, depending on the paper that you're using, if it's a really textured or grainy paper, you may not get the Q-tip to move the graphite around very much. And so that is it. Now that is only one way to shade floored. You could certainly go in around each square and get very intricate. I love the shading process, and I quite often spend more time shading my piece than it actually took me to draw. So there's a little bit of everything in here, and you'll find what you like best about the process. So we're going to go into shading these circles here. And I always love shading circles. And Alka, you're going to love this because it's, perfect for the feel good summit. You always give the circles a smile. And truthfully, I find when I do this, I start to smile myself.
Yeah, it actually, I was just, watching it itself is so calming. It's just simple. It's just a very just lines, squares, circles.
It is truly, truly a very simple process.
Yeah, but you can create so much, simple, it's like less is more and simple is more. It's just,
of course.
yeah.
And this is a very, very basic tile. Like I really don't even draw like this anymore. And I'll show you a few examples. And you can really, really get very intricate. So if you're ever on the internet and, you see all these beautiful, mandala drawings and black and white line drawings, like I said, this is certainly a gateway to all of that, because what this method does, and breaking down all of these pen strokes into very easy to follow steps, is it gives you a lot of confidence in drawing, in being able to put pen and paper. That's also the reason we do all of the drawing right away in pen. Because if you were to sort of sketch everything out with a pencil and then try to trace over it, you can't trace over those lines as confidently as if you were just drawing with pen, because now your concentration is on trying to trace what is already there.
Mm-hmm.
Much like in life, you wake up every day, you go about your day, you do things. You don't have a dress rehearsal for how your day is going to go.
Right.
You do things happen, you make little mistakes, you say things you wish you didn't say. And you can't take those back. So putting paper right away just kind of makes you realize that what you're going to do is okay. It's, truthfully, in the end of the day, it's just pen and paper. I'm going to get
can you use paint if someone wants to use paint? Or I know traditionally it is done with pens.
Of course. So yes, there are many, Tangle enthusiasts who have absolutely taken, the method of this, or certainly taken the patterns and painted them on canvases.
Mm-hmm.
You could take a stick next time you're at the beach and tangle in the sand.
Right.
So there are absolutely, you can take those paint markers. I did a series of coloring pages where I tangled on an 8x10, like a printer size sheet of paper, and with a big thick Sharpie, I tangled. And, that gave me bigger spaces. So then when it was printed as a coloring page, the kids had lots of space to color in and stuff. So, okay. So that's about it for our tipple shading. We're going to come into crescent moon here, and just where the little bumps of crescent moon meet up beside each other, you're just going to put a little scratch of pencil there, and you're going to pull the shading out just towards the center, just a little bit. What'll end up looking like, a dark little crevice in the corner, and then a little bit of a highlight. So I have a couple things to show you, but I want to make sure we get into to shading avro. And there's certainly any number of ways, but what I'm going to get you to do is just where that first line of our A meets that curved line. You're going to spread out that graphite. And so I think you probably start to realize very quickly on your page how adding this pencil just in one, area of each tangle all of a sudden starts to give you that 3D effect. And so you can see how literally some very basic tools, this is not an overwhelming art lesson where you have to get, the specific paint colors and the specific canvas and the right size of brushes and have a whole big work area set up and, wear some dirty clothes you don't mind getting paint on. This is a very simple. And so, it's very easy to travel with it. So if you've got appointments that you get to early and you're waiting, and that's, why I mentioned at the beginning, this sort of little plastic photo case. I think they're about $2, Amazon or Michael's or the dollar store. And it's just a nice way because you carry this around in your bag or you've got it in your car, you also have a hard surface to be able to sort of put your style on and draw in. And then you're kind of always ready to go. And it's, in a way, it kind of makes that self-care very easy to sort of incorporate in your day, out and about and stuff. So what I want to show you, when I mentioned that only working with a few tangles to get into the practice of it. So we did this tile and this tile and this tile, they're all exactly the same. Exact same string and the exact 4 tangles that we just used. All I did was change the areas where I put those tangles. So in the PDF, there's 2 pages where one page is a variety of strings and another page I'll just include a few tangles for you. So you'll have some there as reference. But see, again, this is what I mean, how simple it is. You don't need to overwhelm with all of the tangles that are out there. If you just use the ones that we did today and just practice them in different sizes, different placements. Here, this is just one avro, one big avro. And I tucked the tipple in behind it. And it's as easy as that practice. So, you can go on to create, some more intricate ones, some simple ones. I always like doing them in
this is so pretty. This is so lovely.
Always fun to do.
I can actually visualize a huge big board.
Yeah.
With these see, I do polymer clay.
Yeah.
And there are lots of Boomerang members on here. The workshops are coming for them too. So I can actually visualize this with these small all over, and it's going to look beautiful. I have to get started on this one.
There you go.
You got me into another hobby, Yvonne.
There you go. My pleasure. So there's something a little more intricate. And then, of course, traditional, very type of mandala looking idea. And then, you can get into coloring them in all kinds of ways. You can use pencil crayon. You can use, alcohol markers or water-based markers, Crayolas, whatever it is. And there you go. So there is all kinds of possibilities. And so when I say that, so this is me. And if you want to find me, I'm right there. And then Zentangle.com, I will tell you, is sort of the headquarters of Zentangle by the founders. It is an absolutely fabulous resource. There are lots of free lessons on there. So you can click on those and really hear Rick and Maria's story. They are wonderful to learn from. And they've got lots of resources on there. And then tanglepatterns.com is one of our teachers in Florida has been running this website for about 12 years now, and it's all free. You can sign up to her newsletters, and she sends you out a tangle pattern in your inbox or email every day. But if you go on the website itself, there's a whole little ticker tape thing across the top of lots of beautiful patterns, and you can click on those and it takes you to the step outs or the instructions on how to draw them. So I hope that you do incorporate a little bit of pen and paper work into your routine, however often you can do that. And I hope that you get to create, a wonderful stack of drawings. I did forget, the one thing we always do is we find a way to initial our drawing. just tuck your initials in somewhere. And on the back, I'm trying to find the one we did today. And on the back, it's, I have learned how important it's become to date it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you might want to write a word or two or a sentence. I can't apparently write and talk at the same time. But you might want to make a note or two. And, today you're probably going to write that you did this at the Feel Good Summit. But on days when you're doing this, you might want to say, waiting in the park to meet, Susan for a cup of coffee, or waiting, at the doctor's office with mom, or,
Right.
just sat down to take some time for myself today. I was feeling tired, or I was feeling anxious, and nobody ever sees that because they're going to be looking at the wonderful little drawing you did. And in the future, when you flip back through them again, like that nonverbal journaling I mentioned, you'll have a little couple of clues on the back of the why and when of that. So
Right. And another thing, so do these tangles, do we need to seal them, or they're okay with, you don't need to
no,
seal
they're
them?
absolutely fine just the way they are. I mean, some of these are, I mean, this is watercolor. There's nothing on that. Some of these are a few years old. They're really quite sturdy. Obviously, if you've done them on printer paper, they're not going to be sturdy.
Mm-hmm.
Besides doing them on the official Zentangle tiles, I quite often, you can see that's blank. I quite often cut up a watercolor paper that is, very sturdy. Some people, depending on how much graphite, how much shading you do, some people find they get a little bit smudgy. There's all kinds of products out there that you can spray on to sort of seal your tile, but I don't find that that's really necessary. I mean, sure, they get handled, but you're not doing this kind of stuff with them. You're usually holding them on their edges and being a
Right.
little bit mindful of, where you're putting your fingers, because you want to appreciate what the drawing was. So
Correct. Yeah.
yeah,
Nice.
there's oh my goodness, there's all kinds of things. For a while, I have a coffee table that has a glass top on top of the wood. So for a while, I would draw one and I sit them under the coffee table. And at
Mm-hmm.
one point, somebody came over and thought I had this beautifully tiled, like
Yeah.
actual tile, marble tiled coffee table, and I just lifted up the glass and pulled them all out. And so there's all kinds of wonderful things. You could just tuck today's drawing in the side of a kitchen cabinet or on your hall mirror, and then it's just a little visual reminder of what's possible with pen and
Right.
paper, and the fact that you did that. So
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to turn off the screen share, and
Yes.
I think now I have to make you host again, Alka.
I think I should be
Or can you
fine.
take it
Let's
back?
see. It's okay. No, you can be the host. I'm good. No problem. Yeah. Any questions anybody has, you can come off camera, talk to Yvonne. Typing is also fine, but I think having actual chat is even better. Yeah, it was fun.
Absolutely. Type in if you have any questions. When I have taught from grade 2 students all the way to a senior center, where most of my students at the senior center were like 85 years and older. And
Mhm.
I've seen, the little kids who get anxious and wiggly in their chairs, and all of a sudden they're
Yes.
concentrating for
Yeah.
45 minutes, and their teachers just look at me and go,
What
"How did
happened
you
here?
do that?" And then in the senior center, we had a regular day, but then we had some family days where a family member could come in and participate with their family member who was in the senior center. And I've had patients who have had multiple strokes or Alzheimer's or any number of arthritis and physical disabilities, where they've got a handshake or they've got a tremor or their vision isn't very good and they struggle. And all of a sudden, when they just relax and just trust that they're holding this pen and making the marks on the paper, there's just there's wonderful things that happen. And it's not necessarily about what shows up on the paper, it's what happens here and
Right.
here.
Yes.
You will notice, and this happens in almost every one of my in-person classes, usually about 20 minutes, half an hour into drawing, somebody will always say out loud, I can't believe so many people are so quiet in this room. And
Yeah.
it's not like I say, no talking.
Mm-hmm.
You get into this flow, into this process of trusting your eyes to translate, the instructions that you're seeing, to translate that in through your own hand onto paper. And it
Right.
really is one of those get in the flow, get in the zone kind of
Mhm.
exercises. So
Yeah, very lovely. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Okay, so I have some, let's see. Any questions, please go ahead. We have another 5-7 minutes and we can take some questions you have for Eleanor. Oh, sorry, for Yvonne. So Linda says, I use file folders as my paper and works great cut to size. Yeah, of course. That's a brilliant
absolutely.
idea. Definitely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And file folders, I didn't actually bring up any examples, but there's certainly lots of examples where you can do this, even on colored cardstock.
Yes.
There's a lot of artists now that are doing a lot of printing or journaling on, those shipping tags. Those
Yes.
manila shipping tags, so much like that manila folder that you cut
Right.
out, they're a nice
Yeah.
quality,
You
right?
told her,
And so
yes.
the thing is, those shipping tags are great, right? Because you could write somebody's name on it and then do a little bit of tangling around it and then attach it to, a gift bag or a wine
Yeah.
box or
Personalized, really
yeah.
personalized.
A
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
of tanglers, when they're sending out mail now, they'll put a card or whatever in the envelope and they'll do a little tangle just in the corner of the envelope. So it's one of those things that definitely has those creative, those art type of applications, like I showed earlier, putting your tile onto a blank card. Um, certainly doing larger pieces. You could take paint markers on a canvas and tangle on the canvas that way. And all of that is part of the process. But when you bring it back down to the very simple pen and paper, that's where really a lot of that flow and that, focus and mindfulness and sort of self-care happen, because there's no pressure there. I think when you're doing it more to create a piece of art from it, there's a different mindset. So there's a different kind of pressure that you're putting on yourself to, okay, I'm gonna use Zentangle, but I'm gonna make this canvas that I'm gonna put on my wall, or I want to draw a really great piece because I want to put it on this website to print a phone case and a tote bag. It doesn't happen the same way as when you just sit down and, a cup of tea, cup of coffee,
Free yourself.
and just sit to draw for yourself.
Yeah.
For many, many years, I would do my morning rush with the kids, get them off to school. I would come home, and then just to sort of gather my thoughts and settle myself for the day, I would literally make my cup of tea. I'd sit down with a tile and a pen, and whatever came out of my pen by the time I finished my cup of tea is what came out of my pen. And then I kind of felt like, okay, now I can tackle my big long to-do list of groceries and laundry and, scheduling appointments and swimming and gymnastics and whatever else for the kids and other things that need to happen. And some people do it, as an evening practice before they go to bed. They will sit, they'll have either a small notebook or sketchbook, or, now you can have a stack of tiles. And before you go to bed, you can just sit and draw for a few minutes. And it's really, really quite lovely how it just sort of clears all the stuff that builds up in our brains over the day to
Right, very nice.
keep us distracted from.
Yeah. Okay, I don't see any more questions. So Eleanor just says, thank you very much. I use dots for shading. Yeah, because I didn't have a pencil handy. Yeah, of course, improvise.
Yeah, so the dots, in art terms is referred to as stippling. You can also do stuff that's called cross hatching, which I don't know if I had a tile here that was an example of that. But yeah, there's certainly
Katie is sharing her piece. Beautiful.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you for
Nice.
holding that up. Well done.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was fun and, as you say, relaxing and quiet and mindful and all of those things put together. And yet you do have a sense of accomplishment afterwards, and you want to show it off because you're proud of what you did.
Of
Go
course.
figure.
Yeah.
Would you really want to show your artwork? Nah, I don't think so. But I've attended also some of the Zentangles on Go Boomerang, and everybody's really anxious to show what they did and to be appreciated by all of the others who are watching, which sometimes in these days it's hard to feel appreciated or what you do is appreciated. So I think being in this kind of a medium helps as well.
Yes.
Patty, I think you said that perfectly, actually. It's certainly the one thing that's happening with online learning, right? Is we're still in our own spaces doing it by ourselves. So when we get to hold it up at the end, and share it and hear everybody's responses and accolades, and it makes you realize that even though you were sitting by yourself, you were part of a greater whole, a community effort. And it's funny that you also point that out, because one of the things that does happen in Zentangle classes when they're live and in person is usually at the end, the teacher will collect everybody's tiles. And there's a few people that kind of hand them over a little reluctantly. And we take the tile, and over on another table, we set them all up together in a mosaic and then have everybody come over and look at them. And that is always an amazing moment, because people kind of come over tentatively because they're like, oh no, mine's in there with everybody else's. And I saw the person's beside me, it was really good. And you start to have that self-talk that is sometimes on the negative side. And when you come over and you see the big group mosaic, there's so many oohs and ahs, and you realize that the way you drew it is very similar to the way somebody else drew it, or you thought you drew something really, really small, and then the person beside you admires it because they thought they drew theirs really, really big and didn't like it. And when it's in a mosaic, you get to see that you all got the same instruction, and this is how it all translated, each and every one of you, and you see all of that come together. So you did a piece individually, but when it comes together as a whole at the end of class like that, it really is quite remarkable. So
yeah, because everyone does with the same instructions. It's like a recipe, right?
Absolutely.
It's just the same thing. So the recipe is the same, but the final result could vary from person to person. So yeah. Okay, yeah. Diane says thoroughly enjoyed. That's great, Diane. And looking forward to doing introducing this to my 12-year-old granddaughter, something we can do together. Absolutely. Such a fun thing to do together. Wonderful. Yes. Okay.
It's even more fun. So if you're going to do that with your granddaughters, okay, so do this. You each get a tile and put your string on it, and then you each get a tangle. So let's say you all do crescent moon. And then once you've all done crescent moon, then what you do, it's like you rotate tiles. You give your tile to the girls, and the girls.
I can't hear you.
Oh, somebody can't hear us? No? So then you can switch the tile. So on each tile, you will have one person fill in a space.
Okay.
Right.
Very good.
Yeah.
It's
So
just
it's kind of a mix and match. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a fun little way to switch it up, right? Then everybody has, grandma has a drawing that the two girls, the grandchildren participated in, and then the grandchildren each have a drawing that grandma helped draw and stuff. So
That's great. Wonderful.
Very nice.
it's a fun way to do that.
You're welcome.
Okay. Yeah. Any other questions? Any comments? Not just questions, really. Any comments? What did you? Yeah. And Katie said,
thank you.
Yeah, enjoy the presentation style as well. Best wishes. Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much, Yvonne. I enjoyed watching it, and I'm hoping that I will get to it at some point, and we'll have the PDF as well uploaded on the page when I receive it
Yeah, I'll get that to you this afternoon.
Perfect. Sounds really good.
I
Yeah.
like to send them after because sometimes there's a few things that come in
Yes,
fast
of course.
and
No
questions,
problem.
and then I can
Yeah.
add in some more resources. So
Excellent. Yeah. All
and
right.
I know before you know it, you will be trying to figure out how to add Zentangle into your polymer clay.
I told you, I said I am already visualizing it because with the polymer clay tiles, so I'm thinking of making some inchies, like with 1 inch by 1 inch.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing where you can, so you bake the tile, like you make your tile, and you bake it halfway, and then you can actually do this, then the tangles, the different ones. And then you can put in some colors with alcohol ink, some markers and all those things. I can visualize it right away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So thanks. Thank you very much, everyone. And just a reminder, the next session is on yoga. So that is going to start at 2 o'clock. Okay. And it's the same link. So I'm going to be keeping you busy till like 7 p.m. today. And I'm going to be glued over here. It's going to be a fun day. So
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I will see you again in about 45 minutes again. All right. So everyone take care. And Yvonne, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Alka. It was very nice to be part of this group. Thank you.
And we'll be in touch for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks. See you later, everybody. Bye.